verse 10. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. And it fell upon the third part of the waters and upon the fountains of the waters. And the name of the star is called wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. Any questions right there? The commentaries all agree, because I wanted to make an angel out of that thing, okay? You know what I'm saying? So there's a star, the stars, but they all agree that it's some kind of a meteor, it's some kind of a something that carried bitterness to the point that it destroyed water. Now, the men that died only died indirectly because of what had been turned bitter. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they weren't directly killed, but they
They were killed as a result.
Drinking of the urine, it's got to be bad for you.
Yep. Yeah, you.
You think?
Yeah, so you drink it. Well, in the movie Wolverine, it works with a radiator.
It's coolant, but it ain't drinkable.
Yeah.
You have to put non-potable on it.
Yes,
You should be a screenwriter.
Okay. Any questions? I want you comfortable with that. All that I could get out of it is that it was a star. Okay. It fell out of heaven. It got the name of wormwood because it was bitter, and when it landed, it was going to cause bitterness upon the water.
Boy, he sure used it a lot, didn't he?
Yep.
In the Bible?
He did.
Shows it.
And many men died of the waters. Okay, verse number 12. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. Let's go to Exodus chapter 10 to get a reference on that. Talking about darkening, and it was darkened in portions, okay? So it would have been like we had a partial eclipse of everything. Third part of the sun, third part of the moon. Well, we know that any eclipse of the sun is going to cause a reaction on the moon because it reflects. But in this also was a third part of the stars. Okay. So Exodus chapter 10.
Oh, 13.
Exodus 10, let's pick up reading in verse 21. We're going to read through 23. And the Lord said unto Moses, stretch out thine hand toward the heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, even darkness which may be felt. That's darkness. Darkness that can be felt. And Moses stretched forth his hand toward heaven, and there was a thick darkness in all the land of Egypt 3 days. They saw not one another, neither rose any from his place for 3 days. But all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. So what we're reading here in the book of Revelation has already been outdone back in the book of Exodus. It's only going to happen a third. Let's look in the book of Amos. Amos chapter 5. Okay, in the book of Amos, chapter 5, verse 18. It says, woe unto you that desire the day of the Lord. To what end is it for you? The day of the Lord is darkness and not light. Then let's go to the book of Joel. Joel.
Right before this.
Hmm?
Would you mind if I turn that down?
Away from you?
Yeah, so blow my hair.
Joel chapter 2.
Which way is it going to go?
Joel 2 and 2. So it's a prophetic verse here in the book of Joel. Joel 2 and 2 says, a day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains. A great people and a strong. There hath not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. So what they're saying there, this is going to happen in the end time, but it'll never happen again after that time. In the perpetual, ongoing world, when there's many generations, it will not happen again. Okay? So let's go to Mark chapter 13 to get us a New Testament only people. Because Jesus said, don't forget what I was preaching.
Mark 13.
Mark 13, we're going to look at verse 24. In fact, we'll read 23 to just kind of bounce into it. Mark 13 and 23 says, but take ye heed, behold, I've told you, I have foretold you all things. But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light. And the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. And then let's go back to Isaiah chapter 13. Isaiah 13, we're going to look at verse 9 and 10. And it reads like this, behold, the day of the Lord cometh, cruel, both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in its going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. Okay. Back to Revelation chapter 8. Any questions so far? Verse 13. Revelation 8:13. It says, and I beheld, and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, 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 to the inhabitants of the earth by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels which are yet to sound. You know, I've taught this 2 or 3 times, and I've never gone over to this one commentary to look at, because typically I hang with Dakes. I'm comfortable with Dakes, and then I drug in these other books that basically are in line with Dakes. But over the course of this last year, I got a different book that had a bunch of theologians input in it. And the guy that wrote the book, he'll tell you, he said, well, I think this guy's a nut, but this is what he thinks, and this is what he says. And it's really good, you know, because, you know, you find out there's a lot of people thinking like the nut.
That's right.
But
That's right.
there is, I'm sorry, there is. But in this 13th verse here, the theologians that, I mean, the guys that really go back and study the translations, you know, because I think Dakes, most of us Pentecostal folks that have studied Dakes feel like we can really relate to this guy because he just kind of thinks like us and he just kind of line with us. But I don't know that Dakes is really into Hebrew translations and Greek and all that. But what they told me in there was about 10 of them that said this verse was translated wrong on the angel. It should read like this. And I beheld and I heard a vulture or an eagle, but it was a bird of prey, flying through the midst of heaven. Here comes a bird of prey, flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, 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 to the inhabitants of the earth by reason of other voices of the trumpet of the three angels which are yet to sound. In other words, here come, I like the idea of the vulture better than I did the eagle, because the vultures are going to feast upon the dead and the eagle won't eat nothing dead. Okay? But can you imagine this scene if this vulture comes flying through the heaven, speaking to the inhabitants of earth, saying, as bad as it is down there, as bad, y'all haven't seen nothing yet. You haven't seen nothing yet. And then it began to make a whole lot more sense to me when we understand that verse 13 serves as a transition between 4 plagues brought by God, because we have looked at 4 trumpets so far that were brought by God upon nature. Okay? The 4 trumpets that sounded caused things in the galaxies or upon the earth to become devastating. This verse is a transition, and the subsequent, what's going to happen next is the next 3 are demonic woes. Okay? He's not going to use lightning and hail and storms, and he's going to do something he has never done. He's going to release the demonic. Okay? So let's go to Isaiah chapter 3. I think Dakes would probably say it really doesn't matter what was flying through the air, you know. But the thought of the vultures that was fixing to start feeding upon, yeah, it was a tension getter to me. Isaiah 3 and 9. show of their countenance doth witness against them, and they declare their sin as Sodom. They hide it not. Woe unto their soul, for they have rewarded evil unto themselves. Talking about the inhabitants that just received the woe. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 10. Jeremiah 10 and 19. It says, Woe is me for my hurt, my wound is grievous. But I said, Truly this is a grief, and I must bear it. We must travel to Matthew chapter 11. Matthew 11, and let's look specifically at verse 21, focusing on these woes.
Yeah.
Matthew 11:21 reads, Woe unto thee, Chorazin! Woe unto thee, Bethsaida! For if the mighty works which were done in you had been done in Tyre and Sodom, they would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes.
Preach that.
You did.
Yeah. Mr. Karen preached on that.
So let's go to Luke chapter 11. Go to about 42. Luke 11 and 42. We're going to read through 44. Talking about these woes. But woe unto you, Pharisees, for you tithe mint and rue and all manner of herbs and pass over judgment and the love of God. These ought to not you to have done, and not to leave the others undone. Woe unto you, Pharisees, for you love the uttermost seats in the synagogues and greetings in the markets. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are as graves which appear not, and the men that walk over them are not even aware of them. And our last one will be Mark chapter 14, talking about woes. Mark 14 and 21. It says, The Son of Man indeed goeth, as it is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. Good were it for that man if he had never been born. So talking about I just wanted to conclude in the book of Luke chapter 17 with the thought of that angel possibly being a vulture flying through the midst of heaven. Luke 17 verse 37. Luke 17:37 reads like this. And they answered and said unto him, Where, Lord? And he said unto them, Wheresoever the body is, thither will the eagles be gathered together. So what we have covered tonight, most of the commentaries agree that this is all still in the first 3.5 years. We haven't hit any mid-trib, nothing. Questions? It was kind of self-explanatory tonight.
Pretty much.
You were all pretty quiet tonight.
I see that.
All right. Everybody's good then?
Well, you know, I can understand why people say Book of Revelation scares them if they're not Christians, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't understand why it scares a Christian.
Shouldn't scare Christian
Shouldn't,
at all.
they don't understand it, probably.
I mean, that means-
Yeah,
means
well-
about that.
Well, people are always afraid, you know, there's a lot of people who, they think they want to know things, they think they want to know things. Until, you know,
Because you gotta have the whole truth.
you gotta have the whole truth.
Whole truth.
So help me God.
Yeah.
Y'all will never forget all that, will you?
We live don't
I'm
tell.
telling you. But they really, the entirety of the truth, you know, if you're not saved, it baffles and boggles the mind. It would cause people to fear, you know?
Yeah.
It's like I was talking to our oldest son, even our youngest son. I told him, I said, you know, you're reaching the age of accountability. You need to pay attention to what you do, what you say, what you listen to, you know? And my oldest son, I've told him, I said, you know, that's all I know to tell you, is you know. And that's just like, you know, all this stuff that's breaking out. They're now saying that there's an outbreak of that Ebola or whatever in Atlanta City now. And I can remember not too long ago somebody saying it's not a matter if, it's just a matter of when it breaks out.
Yeah.
So people, they may call these psychic people, but they don't get the whole truth and nothing but the truth. But the book tells us the truth.
Yeah, that was, my son told me, well, you know, there's other people that have told things to come. And I said, yeah, there's been people, but he says, but he told me about some book in 1984, if you read it, you'll see. And I said, well, the devil has other people out there that they tell things and they do things, they copycat. I said, I don't know what you're talking about because I've never read that, but
What was he specifically talking about?
a book called 1984, where this guy, a philosopher, went in and told all these things that were going to happen.